Hello and welcome to today's video. I'm going to be discussing hammers with you, which is a tool that everyone knows, but not a lot of people know the details. And I'm going to try and use some scrap wood here and tell you some tips so that when you're nailing different fasteners, nails, yours don't look like this and you don't get bent nails. So stick around to get my tips. When I say hammer, that word doesn't actually mean a lot specifically. It just means any sort of device that's used to be hit into, that can hit like a nail into a piece of wood or something. And there's all sorts of hammers, like this right here is a tack hammer. It's very small and it's used for little nails just to get, say, to hold up wallpaper, hold up Tyvek. And this one, there's many others like it that have specialties. But today I'm going to be talking about the main type, which I like to think of as a common hammer that has your head and the claw that's used for pulling nails. For this type of hammer, there's two main types. Yes, there are some newer ones like fiberglass and titanium, but the main types of these standard hammers are steel, kind of here, and wood. It's got a wood shaft. There's some pros and cons to each, and I'm going to discuss them here. So the wood one, it's a lot lighter. The wood isn't very dense, so you can carry it with a lot less weight. Also, the wood is able to absorb some of the vibrations, so when you hit, it doesn't send a shock wave back into you. Over time, this can feel nice. However, the downside is you aren't going to get quite as much power. The vibration dampens the hit, and because it has less weight, you're not going to be able to strike as hard. So you have to balance less pain on your arms, but more effort hitting. The steel, on the other hand, is very heavy. This right here is, I'm not sure, it might be 16 or 18 ounces. And it's very heavy, very dense, so it does a very nice, strong hit. However, unlike the wood, that steel reverberates right back into your arm, and it's going to send a bit of a shock wave, which initially it might not bother you. However, over years of hitting and hitting, can develop some elbow problems, as that just keeps giving you a little shock wave every time. So this one, I prefer steel just because it hits harder, but over time, you may end up switching to wood or titanium, but the choice is really yours. Other than weight, the other consideration when sizing your hammer is the length of it. The longer the shaft, the more rotational force and torque you can get. Whereas if you have a smaller hammer or you're choking up on it, it's going to move a lot less distance. However, you're going to need to go a lot quicker to get the same force as a slower hit from far away. This right here, the steel one, is about 13.5 inches long. This wood is 13 inches. But for framers and people who are on the job site professionally, theirs can get even longer, 14, 15 inches. So they can really give it a strong whack and sink a 16 penny in just a couple hits. So definitely consider how long your hammer is. And the shorter it is, might make it a little easier on your strength, but it's going to take more hits to sink a nail. Now that you know how to size your hammer properly, it's time to talk about actually nailing in a nail with your hammer. So I've got a little 8-penny finishing nail right here, which I'm going to use to talk about it. The first thing to know when using your hammer is that you should don't ever choke up on it. It's kind of like different habits you have where it might feel easier in the short run and it might be more difficult to hold back. However, you just want to do it right. Even though you might miss more often, eventually, once you get the hang of it, you're going to have a much stronger and much more efficient stroke. So don't choke up on it. Grab it at the bottom. I think the best grip is usually having a V with your thumb. It's basically like you're shaking someone's hand. Put the hammer in your hand and clamp down on it. You don't need to hold too tight. You're not trying to actually swing the hammer. Don't think about your swinging the hammer, but just going in a fluid motion with your elbow and wrist, just kind of bringing the hammer along. So don't try and snap anything. Just do a nice fluid motion. Another thing to know is that when you miss the nail, which it's when, not if, don't hold the nail with your fingers at the bottom. Because when you miss, it's going to have your fingers pinned right under there and there's going to be no shock. So it's going to be a really hard hit. Instead, when you're trying to hold up a little bit so that when you miss, it can slow it down a bit and act as some suspension. And it's not going to be quite as harsh as just pinned right to the wood. It's a hard hit. So hold the nail higher so then you can get it a little better. Now that I've discussed how to nail it in, I'm going to demonstrate with, let me go here, got a 8-penny finishing nail. That table I was on is a pretty terrible spot to hit. It's got a lot of give to it, so it's not very strong. My current workshop isn't set up yet, so I'm just in the concrete here so I can get a good surface when I try and nail this. So I'm going to go a little slow on this one just to demonstrate, but I'm going to hold high up on the nail, as we said, not to pin my finger down. Hold up, tack it in place, and nice and easy. There we go. That was more hits than I would like to have, and as you're going, you get a lot quicker. I'm a little rusty right now, got a 4-penny. Let's see. 1, 2, sink it. So really just get a nice smooth motion and you can really get these in. Sink it. Got it. I've got a 16-penny nail here. I haven't done a lot of hammering recently, so I'm a bit rusty. Those on the production and job site know that it should be 1 tap set, then 2, maybe a 3rd hit, and you should be done. It really shouldn't be too fast. But if you're a beginner working on your home, feel free to take more. Slow it down. Especially part of hammering is knowing your environment. If you're inside finishing off a house, you can't just be hammering and hitting your hammer all over the place. You got to be a little more delicate, especially those finishing hits. So just be careful, and if you need, slow it down. As with practice, you'll get better. So now I'll actually demonstrate with the 16-penny. Fingers up, set a swat, 1, maybe 2 to get it in there, then just let it go. So that was a little many than I would like, but for homeowners, if you don't have a lot of experience, there's no real negative in just drilling a pilot hole. Just find a drill bit that's a little bit smaller than the shank of your nail, set it. Some hardwood here. Another thing to note is if you're just a homeowner where you aren't quite as confident, there's nothing negative about grabbing a drill, getting a drill bit that's a little bit smaller than the size of the shank. The bigger size you get, if it's bigger, you're going to lose a lot of that strength because it gets grip strength. So I've got a drill bit in here. Just going to make a hole right in. Doesn't need to be too deep, just a little something. Maybe that was about 1/2 inch, I'd say. So now take it in here. Just a little tap to get it in there. Then it's nice and easy. Then it slides in. The more you need it, you can drill a little bit bigger, but I'd say try your best to stay away from it and develop the habit of learning to not rely on the drill. So that you're able to just sink 16-penny, 16-penny, 16-penny. And it's the same thing. With practice, you get better. If you want to practice, a piece of 4x4 is a great thing. It's the exact size, 3.5 inches as a 16-penny. And you know it's not going to go through, so it's just grab an old piece of scrap and just get some 16 pennies in if you want to practice. Now, for 5 final safety tips. Number 1, as we said, hold the nail properly. Don't put yourself in a position that your fingers are pinned under. Give yourself this shock so that you can absorb it a little bit. Hold up. Next tip, get yourself a pair of safety safety glasses. They're cheap, but can be very helpful in the event of something. If you hit something hard, like if I hit another nail, this thing can go flying all over the place. It happened actually a couple minutes ago. It's not going to make the video, but hit it off another nail, it shot all over the place. So these glasses can help you just to protect your eyes. Also, a nice pair of gloves can help just to absorb some of that shock if you hit yourself and give a better grip, but that's not quite as essential as a good pair of safety glasses. The next tip, go smooth on your hits. There's no pressure if you're not as comfortable with the nail is to crush it every time. I don't know about you, but when I try and hit a golf ball extra hard, it ends up going less distance. Sometimes your best strokes are going to be when you take it easy, have a nice motion. So go nice and easy. Go through the motion as you know, be smooth. Next tip, inspect the condition of your nail and hammer. Make sure your hammer is all intact. That's pretty easy. These steel ones, unlikely to break. I think this one's probably about 30 years old. But if you got a nail that's all bent like this, you probably don't want to be using this. That's just not going to work. You can't hold this down. It's not a U. It's not a little U. So make sure it's a good quality nail and it's not bent. If there's a little bit at the end, maybe try and tap it out a little bit on something. You might be able to get it in. If it's the smaller the nail, it might be a little easier. It's 16 penny. It's a little tricky, but make sure you inspect the quality about these. The final tip when you're nailing is treat it seriously. This might seem like something small and just a little hammer made out of steel, but this can really hold the house together, but it can also do a lot of damage if you aren't paying attention, if you're being a little loosey, just miss your hand, just not a good grip. So pay attention, have a good grip, follow what you know, and you're gonna have a really strong bond with that nail and that wood, making you a good frame or whatever you're building. So hopefully you enjoyed these tips on how to nail nails with these hammers and a little bit about the different types, and hopefully you can take some of this information and have the nails not look like some of these U's. Usually a U is always a bad thing with a nail. You don't want a U. So don't go crooked and follow the directions and you should be good. Thank you.